Welcome to the deep dive. Imagine finding out that the primary rule of fitness, the one you've been told every single time you step foot in a gym, have actually been completely wrong for the last 17 years.
Yeah, it really is a landmark moment.
Right. I mean, today we are looking at how the American College of Sports Medicine just entirely shattered the accepted blueprint for building muscle.
Yeah.
You know that overwhelming sense that there is only one, highly engineered, optimal way to work out?
Oh, absolutely.
And if you deviate from the perfect sequence of exercises, you're just wasting your time. Well, that rigid manual has just been completely torn to shreds.
It really has. We are looking at their first major update to resistance training guidelines since 2009. And the sheer volume of research they used to arrive at these new conclusions is just staggering.
2009, think about the absolute avalanche of noise and, frankly, misinformation that has filled our social media feeds since then. Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is to cut through all of that internet bro science and find out what actually works for your body. And we're basing this on a massive breakdown of the new ACSM position stand. We're talking about insights driven by the senior author, Dr. Stuart Phillips from McMaster University. So this isn't just one guy's opinion, right?
Yeah, not at all.
The foundation of this text is built on 137 systematic reviews encompassing over 30,000 participants. That's huge.
It is. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, a 17-year gap in guidelines means we are finally getting a much-needed course correction. What Dr. Phillips and his team are doing here is, well, they're shifting the entire paradigm.
Yeah, because for over a decade, fitness culture has been dominated by these extreme, hyper-complicated routines.
Right, routines designed by influencers for other influencers. The shift here is moving away from that rigid dogma and toward a much more patient-focused, evidence-based approach. The goal is really to strip away the intimidating barriers that keep the average person from just starting.
I want to go right for the throat of the biggest barrier, which is this deeply ingrained gym dogma about repetitions. If you have ever touched a dumbbell, you have heard this supposedly unbreakable law.
The famous 8 to 12 rep range.
Yes. To build muscle size, you must lift a weight for exactly 8 to 12 repetitions. If you do fewer than 8, you're just building strength, not size. And if you do, more than 12, you're just doing cardio. I mean, it has been treated like the law of gravity.
It really was the absolute golden rule of hypertrophy, which, is the biological process of muscle tissue expanding and growing larger.
Right.
But the data from those 30,000 participants shatters that illusion completely.
Completely.
The reality is that hypertrophy happens across a much, much wider rep range than we previously thought. The science clearly shows that lifting lighter weights for 20 or even 30 repetitions absolutely does build muscle mass.
Wait, really?
Yes, just as effectively as the traditional 8 to 12 rep range. The only actual requirement is that you are pushing the muscle close to fatigue.
Hold on, so if lifting lighter weights for more reps builds muscle just as effectively, why would anyone ever subject themselves to lifting incredibly heavy weights?
That's a great question.
Because it's uncomfortable, it puts more strain on your joints, and honestly, it's just intimidating. Is it like driving a car?
How do you mean?
Like building muscle size is just upgrading the engine in your car, making it bigger. But building pure strength is like upgrading the software in the car's computer so it knows how to use all that horsepower at once.
Oh, that is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. Yes. Yeah. Making the engine bigger, the muscle size relies on metabolic stress.
Yeah.
You're creating a chemical environment of fatigue in the muscle.
Okay.
And you can do that with a 5-pound weight or a 50-pound weight as long as you take it to failure. But, and this is a crucial distinction of the text, if you want to get stronger, meaning a higher 1-rep maximum, you have to lift heavy. Full stop.
Interesting. So it's a completely different mechanism then.
Exactly. Maximal strength is largely neurological. It's that software upgrade you mentioned.
So lifting heavy just teaches your brain how to fire the muscles you already have.
Precisely. When you lift a massive load, your central nervous system has to learn how to recruit thousands of muscle fibers to fire simultaneously. If you only ever lift light weights to fatigue, your muscles might get physically larger, sure.
Right.
But your nervous system never gets the practice of generating maximum output all at once. You have a big engine, but the software doesn't know how to redline it. So if you want to be physically strong, you have to practice the specific skill of lifting heavy.
Wow. Okay, so if the nervous system doesn't care whether you do 5 reps or 25 reps to build physical size, it makes me wonder what other rules our bodies are completely ignoring.
Oh, quite a few.
Which brings us to gym equipment, right? And the massive barrier of entry people feel when they think about starting a routine.
The complexity of modern gym culture is arguably the biggest roadblock right now.
Mm.
People genuinely believe they need an incredibly detailed, periodized workout plan.
Periodization, right?
Yeah. Periodization is this concept of highly structured, phased workout planning where you shift variables like volume and intensity week by week. But the text shows that for the average person, periodization is largely unnecessary. It just doesn't matter nearly as much as the internet wants you to think.
That's a huge relief because I see influencers constantly claiming that if you aren't using like a specific cable machine set to a precise 45-degree angle, you are wasting your workout.
Completely false.
Right. But reading through this data, the biological adaptation doesn't seem to care about the brand of the machine at all. Dumbbells, resistance bands, your own body weight, they all work because the muscle tissue itself is blind, right?
That's a great way to put it.
It doesn't know what is in your hand. It only registers tension.
Exactly. The mechanism for growth is tension, regardless of the source. And the real revelation in these guidelines is the minimal effective dose. The data suggests that you can trigger this adaptation. You can build muscle and improve your health in just 20 minutes a session.
Just 20 minutes.
Yes. This is what we mean by a patient-focused reality. How do we get people to actually start? We tell them the truth. You don't need a spreadsheet. You don't need expensive machines, and you don't need to live in the gym.
Here's where it gets really interesting. When you look at what the public health guidelines now classify as a strengthening activity, they explicitly list things like Pilates and yoga.
Right.
Which, okay, that makes sense. You're holding your body weight. But then they list gardening. You are telling me that planting petunias is backed by a massive 30,000-person scientific review as a legitimate way to build strength.
I know it sounds counterintuitive until you look at the actual biomechanics of gardening.
Yeah.
Think about the physical demands.
Okay.
You are squatting to the ground, kneeling, deadlifting heavy bags of wet soil, pulling stubborn weeds, pushing wheelbarrows. I mean, it is a highly functional multiplanar resistance activity.
Multiplanar meaning you aren't just moving up and down like a piston on a gym machine. You're moving in three-dimensional space.
Exactly. You are twisting, bending, and lifting at awkward angles, which engages your core and stabilizing muscles in ways a rigid gym machine never would. The reason Dr. Phillips and the ACSM deliberately include things like gardening is to combat intimidation.
That makes so much sense.
They're telling the public that challenging your muscles against resistance counts, whether it happens in a squat rack or a flower bed.
That reframes things so much. It essentially gives you permission to just live an active life without the guilt of missing a leg day. But while the barrier to entry is lower than we thought, the urgency of why we need to start doing this is intense.
It is very intense.
Because this data gets very serious when it shifts away from aesthetics and looks at longevity. It's not about looking good on a beach. It is quite literally about long-term survival.
The biological reality is grim if we remain sedentary. Dr. Phillips' research highlights that starting around age 30, the human body begins to naturally lose muscle mass and strength.
Age 30, that is so early.
It is. It's a slow leak at first, but if we don't actively introduce tension to signal the body to keep that muscle, it progresses into a clinical condition called sarcopenia.
Sarcopenia, the age-related loss of skeletal muscle mass. The text goes into how protein metabolism supports muscle adaptation to specifically combat this. And this isn't just about, struggling to open a jar of pickles when you're older.
No, not at all.
Sarcopenia drastically reduces physical independence and skyrockets the risk of falls and hospitalizations.
A fall in your 70s or 80s isn't just a bruise. It is often a catastrophic event that permanently ends a person's physical independence. Maintaining muscle tissue is really about maintaining the armor that keeps you upright and safe.
Right.
But to combat this, the guidelines suggest a specific approach that often shocks people: power training.
Yeah, I have a hard time wrapping my head around that. When I hear power training, my brain immediately goes to an NFL combine or massive Olympic weightlifters throwing barbells over their heads.
Sure, that's the common image.
Right. I am absolutely not telling my 75-year-old mother to do power cleans. Isn't that a fast track to a severe injury for an aging adult?
What's fascinating here is how the scientific community defines power versus the way we use it in pop culture. In physics, power isn't about how much sheer weight you can move. It is force multiplied by velocity.
Okay.
Power is about speed. As we age, the first things we lose aren't just our general muscle fibers. We specifically lose our fast-twitch muscle fibers.
The fast twitch ones?
Yes. Those are the ones responsible for quick, reactive, explosive movements. And if you don't use them, your body just discards them.
So power training for an older adult is just about training the body to move fast again.
Yes. Think about the mechanics of tripping over a rug in your living room. If you snag your foot, you do not need the absolute strength to leg press 400 pounds.
Right, that won't help you there.
What you desperately need is power. The speed and reaction time to rapidly shoot your opposite foot forward, plant it firmly, and absorb your falling body weight before your head hits the floor.
Oh, wow. You need the fast twitch fibers to literally catch yourself in midair.
Exactly. That is power training in the context of aging.
Okay.
It doesn't mean barbells. It could be as simple as sitting in a chair and practicing standing up as quickly and explosively as you safely can.
Yeah.
It's just about training your central nervous system to fire rapidly.
Okay, so we've established a very clear, vital foundation. You can get a massive health benefit in just 20 minutes. You can use whatever equipment you have lying around. The 8 to 12 rep rule is a complete myth, and you need to train for speed to prevent falls later in life.
Spot on.
But if we are breaking down a 30,000 person data set, I don't want to ignore the hyper-specific fads that dominate our feeds right now. Let's dig into the mechanisms of these niche tools.
We should. There's a lot of extremely complex terminology thrown around online that just confuses people into paralysis.
Let's start with eccentric training, or negatives. I see fitness influencers constantly preaching that you need to take 5 full seconds to lower a weight, like completely agonizing over the downward phase of a bicep curl. What is the actual biology here?
To understand eccentrics, you have to look at how muscle fibers operate under tension. When you curl a weight up, the concentric phase, your muscle fibers are shortening to generate force.
Okay.
But when you slowly lower that weight, the eccentric phase, your muscle fibers are actively lengthening while still under tension.
Like stretching a rubber band while it's trying to contract.
Precisely. And biologically, this lengthening under tension creates significantly more micro tears in the muscle tissue than the lifting phase does.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. The body then has to repair those micro tears, which is the mechanism that forces the muscle to grow back larger and stronger. So yes, eccentrics are a highly effective mechanism for growth.
But do we need the 5-second countdown?
Are they a magic bullet that requires you to count to 5 on every single rep? No. Standard lifting, where you simply control the weight on the way down rather than letting gravity drop it, creates plenty of eccentric damage for the average person.
That perfectly bridges into the next big fad. Time under tension, or TUT. You hear this everywhere, that your muscle needs to be under continuous, unbroken strain for exactly 45 seconds to trigger growth.
Oh, yes.
People are literally bringing stopwatches to the gym. Why did we think this, and what does the data actually say?
The stopwatch phenomenon came from older bodybuilding theories. They noticed that sets lasting around 40 to 60 seconds seem to produce the most size. But the recent data flips the causality.
How so?
Time under tension is actually a byproduct of a good set, not the biological trigger itself. The actual trigger for growth is pushing the muscle fibers close to absolute failure, creating that metabolic stress we talked about earlier.
So if I lift a heavy weight to failure in 20 seconds or a lighter weight to failure in 60 seconds, the muscle grows either way. The clock doesn't matter.
Exactly. As long as the muscle reaches a state of severe fatigue, it will adapt. You don't need to intentionally lift in slow motion just to hit an arbitrary 45-second metric on a stopwatch. It just overcomplicates a very simple biological response.
Okay, here is one that looks incredibly intense. Blood flow restriction, or BFR training. People are tightly wrapping cuffs or tourniquet-like bands around the top of their arms or legs and then lifting super light weights. What is happening inside the arm when someone does this?
BFR is fascinating because it is essentially a biological trick played on your brain. When you apply those cuffs, you aren't cutting off all blood flow. You are specifically restricting the venous blood flow, the blood trying to leave the muscle and return to the heart while keeping the arterial blood flow open.
Meaning fresh blood can still get in.
Yes. And by trapping that blood, you also trap the lactic acid and other metabolic byproducts that build up when you exercise. Your muscle swells immensely.
Yikes.
This massive pooling of acid and blood sends an emergency signal to your central nervous system. Your brain thinks, wow, the metabolic stress in this arm is off the charts. We must be lifting a massive heavyweight, even if you're only curling a 5-pound dumbbell.
That is wild. You are tricking the central nervous system into triggering the hypertrophy adaptation without actually causing joint strain.
Exactly.
Ah.
Which is why BFR is a profoundly useful tool in a clinical or rehab setting. If you have a torn ligament or a joint injury and physically cannot lift heavy weights, BFR allows you to prevent muscle atrophy using almost no weight at all.
Oh, that makes total sense for rehab.
But for the healthy, average listener just trying to build a resilient body in 20 minutes, it's completely unnecessary. You can get the same metabolic stress by just pushing a normal set to fatigue.
All right, last one. The great debate over workout structure. Full body workouts versus body part splits. The classic chest day, leg day, back day routine.
Oh, yes.
If biological adaptation only cares about tension and volume, why do elite bodybuilders swear by dedicating an entire 2-hour workout to just their chest? Are they just experiencing a placebo effect, or are we misinterpreting the data?
Elite bodybuilders use body part splits out of absolute necessity, but the average person misinterprets why. Growth is dictated by total weekly volume, how many hard sets a muscle experiences over 7 days. Elite bodybuilders require so much weekly volume to force their massive muscles to grow that they physically cannot fit it all into a full-body routine. They have to dedicate an entire day to the chest just to get the sheer number of sets in.
But for the rest of us, does doing 15 sets of chest exercises in one day actually do anything?
For the average person, there is a ceiling on how much a muscle can adapt from a single session. After about 6 to 8 hard sets for a specific muscle, you hit severe diminishing returns.
Meaning you just stop growing.
Yes, anything after that is what we call junk volume. You are creating fatigue and joint strain without signaling any extra muscle growth. The 30,000-person review makes it crystal clear. Whether you do 3 full-body workouts a week or split it up, the results are identical if the total weekly sets are the same.
Wow.
Hitting a muscle with a few high-quality sets, then letting it recover, is vastly superior to a marathon arm day full of junk volume.
So what does this all mean? If we take all 137 systematic reviews, the 30,000 participants, and Dr. Stuart Phillips' decades of research, this data effectively removes the gatekeepers from fitness.
It absolutely does.
It proves that biological adaptation does not care about your gym membership tier, your perfectly angled cable machine, or a complex periodization spreadsheet. It only responds to tension and effort. You can get an effective workout in 20 minutes.
Right.
The 8 to 12 rep rule is completely busted. And most importantly, you need to start introducing resistance, even if it's just gardening by age 30, to fight the very real threat of sarcopenia.
It's really about securing your future autonomy. The goal isn't to look like a fitness influencer. The goal is independence, longevity, and having a body that actively supports the life you want to live.
Exactly. This deep dive was about giving you back your time. You can officially stop stressing over the hyper-complex routines dominating your social media feeds. The rigid instructions for how to build your fitness are gone. You get to design it yourself now.
This raises an important question, though, and it's something I want you to mull over as you go about the rest of your day. If the science shows that true physical independence in our later years relies more on power, that fast twitch speed and reaction time to catch ourselves from falling, rather than just strength to lift a heavy box, how completely do we need to rethink the way we move today to prepare for the body we will inevitably have tomorrow?